Loneliness and depression, those shadowy companions that sometimes seem to cling to us even in moments when the world expects us to be at our brightest, are not just modern afflictions. They are as old as humanity itself, deeply woven into the fabric of our existence. The Stoic philosophers of ancient Greece and Rome were no strangers to these feelings, though they may have described them differently. They lived in times of uncertainty, surrounded by wars, political upheaval, and personal loss, yet they sought not just to survive but to thrive amidst such turmoil. Their teachings, preserved through the centuries, offer us a treasure trove of wisdom to draw from, particularly when we find ourselves grappling with the heavy weight of isolation and despair. The first remedy they offer is the profound concept of amor fati, the love of one's fate. This is not mere resignation to the events that befall us but an active embrace of them, a recognition that everything, even the seemingly bad or difficult, has its place in our lives. When we feel the sharp sting of loneliness or the deep ache of depression, the temptation is often to wish things were different, to long for a past that is gone or a future that feels unattainable. Amor fati asks us to instead lean into our present experience, to see it not as an obstacle but as a teacher. This doesn't mean we deny our pain or pretend it doesn't exist, rather, we acknowledge it fully, understanding that it is part of our path. By loving our fate, we transform our suffering into a source of strength. We begin to see our struggles as necessary parts of our story, as chapters in the larger narrative of our lives that are leading us toward growth, wisdom, and perhaps even a deeper sense of purpose. This shift in perspective can be incredibly liberating, allowing us to release the burden of resistance and find a kind of peace in acceptance. It's not about giving up, it's about finding meaning in what is, rather than constantly yearning for what isn't. The second Stoic remedy invites us to narrow our focus to what is within our control and to release our grip on what is not. The Stoics were deeply pragmatic in their approach to life, understanding that much of our suffering comes from trying to control the uncontrollable. They taught that the world outside us is full of variables, other people's actions, the whims of fate, the passage of time, over which we have no influence. Yet, we often expend enormous energy and emotional resources trying to bend these external factors to our will. This is particularly true when it comes to feelings of loneliness and depression, which can sometimes stem from a sense of powerlessness, a belief that our circumstances are beyond our control and that we are at the mercy of forces greater than ourselves. The Stoics, however, remind us that while we may not be able to control the fact that we feel lonely or depressed, we do have control over our inner world, our thoughts, our attitudes, and our responses. This distinction is crucial. When we shift our focus from what we cannot change to what we can, we reclaim our agency. We might begin by observing our thoughts and challenging those that are unhelpful or distorted. For example, if we catch ourselves thinking, "I am completely alone and I will always feel this way," we can question the truth of this statement and consider other perspectives. Are there moments when we don't feel lonely? Are there people in our lives, however distant, who care about us? Can we reach out to someone, even if just for a brief connection? By taking control of our thoughts, we can begin to change our experience of loneliness and depression, transforming them from overwhelming forces into challenges that we can navigate with greater ease and resilience. This approach also encourages us to take practical steps that are within our power, such as establishing a routine, engaging in activities that bring us joy, or seeking professional help if needed. The Stoic principle of focusing on what is within our control is not about denying the difficulties we face, it's about empowering ourselves to respond to those difficulties in ways that are constructive and life-affirming. A third Stoic remedy, and one that might seem counterintuitive at first, is the practice of premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. This is the act of mentally preparing oneself for the worst possible outcomes, not to dwell in negativity, but to build resilience and diminish fear. The Stoics believed that by imagining the worst-case scenarios, we could rob them of their power over us. When it comes to loneliness and depression, this practice can be particularly useful. These emotions often carry with them a deep-seated fear, fear of being alone forever, fear of never finding happiness again, fear of being swallowed up by despair. Premeditatio malorum invites us to face these fears head-on, to sit with them in our minds, and to explore what they might look like in reality. What if we were to feel this way for an extended period? What would that mean for our lives? How would we cope? By considering these questions, we begin to realize that, while these scenarios may be unpleasant, they are not insurmountable. We can prepare strategies to manage them, such as building a support network, cultivating hobbies that bring us joy, or developing a practice of mindfulness or meditation to help us stay grounded in the present. The act of contemplating these worst-case scenarios can actually reduce their hold on us, making them seem less frightening and more manageable. It's a way of training ourselves to be ready for whatever life might throw at us, with the understanding that we have the inner resources to handle it. This practice doesn't mean we expect the worst to happen, rather, it equips us to face life with greater equanimity, knowing that we can survive and even thrive in the face of adversity. The fourth Stoic remedy, one that resonates deeply with the human experience, is the cultivation of gratitude. Gratitude, as the Stoics taught, is not just about acknowledging the good things in life, it is about fully appreciating them, recognizing their value, and understanding that they are not guaranteed. When we are consumed by loneliness or depression, it can be incredibly difficult to see beyond the fog of our current emotions. The world can seem bleak, and the things we once found joy in can feel distant or insignificant. Yet, the practice of gratitude invites us to look closer, to search for the small, often overlooked details of our lives that still hold beauty, warmth, and meaning. This might be as simple as the comfort of a soft blanket on a cold night, the taste of a favorite meal, or the sound of rain against the window. It could be the memory of a kind word from a friend or the presence of a beloved pet. By consciously focusing on these small blessings, we begin to shift our perspective. The world, which seemed so full of darkness, starts to reveal glimmers of light. This doesn't mean we ignore our pain, rather, it means we make room for other experiences alongside it. We acknowledge that, even in our darkest moments, there is still something to be thankful for. This practice of gratitude can be transformative. It helps to rewire our brains, making us more attuned to the positive aspects of our lives. Over time, this can lead to a greater sense of contentment and a reduction in the intensity of negative emotions. The Stoics understood that happiness does not come from having everything we want, but from wanting and appreciating what we have. By cultivating gratitude, we can begin to find peace, even in the midst of loneliness and depression, as we learn to cherish the good that still exists in our lives. Another profound Stoic remedy is found in the practice of sympathia, which is the recognition of our interconnectedness with all of humanity and, indeed, with the entire universe. This concept is rooted in the understanding that we are not isolated beings but are part of a vast, interwoven web of life. Sympathia teaches us that our individual existence is connected to something much larger than ourselves. When we are feeling lonely or depressed, it can be easy to fall into the trap of believing that we are completely alone in our struggles, that no one else could possibly understand what we are going through. However, sympathia reminds us that this is far from the truth. Our experiences, though deeply personal, are shared by countless others throughout the world and across time. We are part of a collective human experience, one that encompasses joy, sorrow, love, loss, and everything in between. This realization can bring a sense of comfort and belonging even when we are physically alone. We can take solace in the knowledge that others have walked this path before us and that we are connected to them through our shared humanity. Sympathia also encourages us to reach out to others, to seek connection rather than retreating into isolation. By being of service to others, by offering kindness, and by simply being present for those around us, we can strengthen our bonds with the world and reduce our sense of loneliness. This practice is not just about alleviating our own suffering, it is about recognizing that we are all in this together, that our actions have an impact on those around us, and that by contributing to the well-being of others, we also enrich our own lives. Sympathia calls us to look beyond ourselves and to see the larger picture, to understand that we are part of a vast, interconnected whole, and that this connection is a source of strength and support even in our darkest times. The sixth Stoic remedy involves the cultivation of self-discipline and the establishment of a daily routine. The Stoics were firm believers in the power of discipline as a means of maintaining control over one's life and emotions. When we are overwhelmed by loneliness or depression, it is easy to let go of the structure in our lives, to succumb to the pull of inertia, and to allow our days to become disorganized and aimless. However, this lack of routine can often exacerbate our feelings of despair, as it leads to a sense of drifting without purpose. The Stoics recognize that discipline is not just about imposing rules on ourselves, it is about creating a framework within which we can thrive. By establishing a routine, we give our lives a sense of order and predictability, which can be especially comforting when everything else feels uncertain. This might involve setting regular times for waking up, eating, exercising, and engaging in activities that are meaningful to us. It could also include practices such as journaling, meditation, or reflection, which help us to stay grounded and connected to our values. Discipline also involves making choices that support our well-being, even when they are difficult. This might mean resisting the urge to isolate ourselves and instead reaching out to others, or it might involve making healthy food choices and getting enough sleep, even when we feel like doing otherwise. By cultivating self-discipline, we take responsibility for our own well-being. We create a foundation that can support us during difficult times and give us the strength to face our challenges with resilience. This does not mean being rigid or unforgiving with ourselves, it means finding a balance between structure and flexibility, between self-care and accountability. By maintaining discipline in our lives, we can create a sense of stability and purpose that helps to mitigate the effects of loneliness and depression. A seventh remedy offered by the Stoics is the contemplation of impermanence. The Stoics were keenly aware of the transient nature of all things, including our emotions. They taught that everything in life, from our greatest joys to our deepest sorrows, is temporary. This understanding can be a powerful tool when dealing with loneliness and depression, emotions that often feel as though they will last forever. When we are in the grip of these feelings, it can be hard to imagine a time when we will feel differently. The future can seem bleak and the present unbearable. However, the Stoics remind us that just as night follows day and seasons change, so too will our emotions. The intensity of our loneliness or depression will not last forever, it will ebb and flow, and eventually, it will pass. By contemplating the impermanence of all things, we can gain a sense of perspective. We can remind ourselves that this moment, as painful as it may be, is just one part of our larger journey. This does not mean dismissing or minimizing our feelings, it means acknowledging them, sitting with them, and understanding that they are not the whole of our existence. This awareness can help us to endure our difficult emotions with greater patience and resilience, knowing that they are temporary. It also encourages us to make the most of our time, to focus on what we can do in the present rather than getting lost in worries about the future or regrets about the past. The Stoics often reflected on the brevity of life as a way to maintain perspective and to remind themselves of what truly matters. By keeping the impermanence of our emotions in mind, we can navigate the ups and downs of life with greater equanimity and find peace even in the midst of our struggles. The eighth remedy is the practice of self-reflection and the cultivation of self-awareness. The Stoics placed great emphasis on the importance of knowing oneself, of understanding one's own mind, and of being in tune with one's thoughts, feelings, and motivations. When we are feeling lonely or depressed, it can be easy to become disconnected from ourselves, to lose sight of who we are and what we value. However, by engaging in self-reflection, we can begin to reconnect with our inner selves and gain insights into the root causes of our emotions. This process of self-exploration might involve journaling, where we write down our thoughts and feelings in an effort to understand them better. It could also involve meditation or quiet contemplation, where we sit with our emotions and observe them without judgment. Through these practices, we can begin to identify patterns in our thinking, such as negative self-talk or unrealistic expectations, that may be contributing to our feelings of loneliness and depression. We can also explore our desires, our fears, and our unmet needs, gaining a deeper understanding of what we truly want and what is standing in the way of our happiness. Self-awareness is not about criticizing ourselves or finding fault, it is about gaining a clear and honest understanding of who we are. This knowledge can be incredibly empowering as it allows us to take more control over our lives and our emotions. When we understand the sources of our loneliness or depression, we can take steps to address them in a more targeted and effective way. We can also begin to develop greater compassion for ourselves, recognizing that our struggles are part of the human experience and that we are not alone in facing them. The practice of self-reflection is a powerful tool for personal growth and healing, helping us to navigate the complexities of our emotions with greater wisdom and clarity. The ninth Stoic remedy involves finding strength and inspiration in the example of others who have faced similar struggles. The Stoics often look to role models, both historical and contemporary, as sources of guidance and encouragement. When we are feeling lonely or depressed, it can be incredibly helpful to remember that we are not the first to experience these emotions and that many others have faced similar challenges and come through them with grace and strength. By reading about the lives of Stoic philosophers such as Marcus Aurelius, who endured tremendous personal and political difficulties, or Epictetus, who was born a slave and faced constant physical hardship, we can gain a sense of perspective on our own struggles. These figures are not just distant historical figures, they are examples of what it means to live with resilience and wisdom in the face of adversity. We can also look to people in our own lives, whether they are family members, friends, or public figures, who have demonstrated strength in the face of challenges. Their stories can provide us with hope and motivation, reminding us that it is possible to overcome even the darkest of times. By seeing how others have coped with their struggles, we can find the courage to continue on our own journey. This practice is not about comparing ourselves to others or feeling inadequate, it is about recognizing that we are part of a larger human story, one that is filled with examples of perseverance, resilience, and triumph over adversity. By drawing strength from these examples, we can find the inspiration we need to keep moving forward, even when the path ahead seems uncertain. Finally, the 10th Stoic remedy is the practice of mindfulness and the art of living in the present moment. The Stoics taught that much of our suffering comes not from the events themselves, but from our thoughts about them, our regrets about the past, our anxieties about the future, our constant striving for something other than what is. Mindfulness, as the Stoics understood it, is the practice of being fully present in the here and now, of paying attention to our current experience without judgment or distraction. When we are mindful, we are able to observe our thoughts and feelings without getting caught up in them. We can recognize that our emotions are just that, emotions, not facts, not permanent states of being. This awareness can be incredibly powerful when dealing with loneliness or depression, as it allows us to create some distance between ourselves and our emotions. Instead of being overwhelmed by our feelings, we can acknowledge them, sit with them, and allow them to pass. Mindfulness also helps us to appreciate the small moments of joy and peace that are present in our lives, even when we are struggling. It encourages us to connect with our senses, to notice the beauty in the world around us, to find contentment in the simple, everyday experiences that we might otherwise overlook. By living in the present moment, we can reduce the burden of our regrets and anxieties, and find a greater sense of peace and acceptance in our lives. This does not mean ignoring our problems or pretending that everything is fine. It means embracing life as it is, with all its imperfections and uncertainties, and finding the beauty and meaning that exists in every moment. The practice of mindfulness, as the Stoics taught, is a powerful tool for navigating the challenges of life with grace and wisdom, helping us to find peace, even in the midst of loneliness and depression.